I want to take an angle that you may not have been aware of so far, but certain newspapers, certain BBC types and lefty snowflakes like David Lammy and, Owen Jones, 33 2/3, are getting their knickers in a twist about an interview my old friend Raheem Kassam had on the Today programme on Radio 4 today. That's what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the fascist left and the way they're trying to close down free speech. They only want free speech for themselves. They don't want it for anybody else. This is one of the most blatant examples of how they are trying to stop the political debate in this country and how it is now wrong to be right. I don't know how they're getting away with it. When we won the EU referendum, when there's a Conservative government in power and Donald Trump won the American election, he's now got 50% approval ratings through the roof. And the more the lefties attack him, the more popular he becomes. They are trying to close down voices like mine and Raheem David Vance. We know what's going on with the shadow banning on social media. The lefties are in control, although they lose every bloody election they're involved in. But they're still in power because these cultural Marxists, these common purpose disciples, have infiltrated every bit, every part, every sector of public life. They run and they infest universities. So then they think it's okay to go on strike and damage our children's education, even though our children are bloody paying for it. It's the same kind of logic that demands more and more money for the NHS without looking at waste or health tourism, where doctors say, oh no, we can't be policemen and policewomen. Why not? You're keen to sign people on the sick. What about signing them off the sick and getting an incentive? What about getting them off drugs? What about getting them to eat real food? We might talk about that later. And sugar. I am more angry about, well, certainly on the same level, about sugar and Sharia law and jihadists in this country. They're all on the same level as far as I'm concerned. But the BBC then, this is in the Independent. Let's take it from there because they're almost hysterical. Their editor, their columnist, and I guess their couple of readers. The BBC has been accused of legitimising right-wing extremists by giving the former Breitbart London editor, Raheem Kassam, a platform to spout bile, in quotation marks, on Radio 4's flagship Today programme. Raheem Kassam, who formerly served blah, 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 Nigel Farage, the rest of it, the usual rubbish, right? A prominent supporter of the far-right figurehead, i.e. Tommy, he has led 3 Tommy rallies and publicised his cause during a 2-month imprisonment for contempt of court. So today, the lefty snowflake press, instead of talking about what I found horrendous, what Tommy said in his video last night and this morning, the fact that he was in solitary for 2 months, people were shouting abuse at him through his door of his cell, the fact he could only eat canned tuna because he thought people were gobbing in it or pissing in his food. Just imagine this for a moment. Now, you would have thought the lefties would be up in arms about this, wouldn't you? I mean, look at the way they bleat when someone gets taken off to Guantanamo Bay. Look how upset they get when the police pull their guns and blow away some gangster in the streets of London. Why aren't they talking about Tommy? Why aren't they protecting his free speech? Why aren't they saying no matter what he did or who he is, he still has the same rights as everybody else when he goes to prison? But you see, I'm not changing my position. I think Tommy was mad to fall into this trap. I'm going to say it to his face. You watch. However, I do think he's a political prisoner, and there was no need for him to be in prison, and he won't go back to prison now. But when I listened to him, when I saw him with his kids last night, this is what the Liberals should be upset about, but no. They're getting upset with Raheem. And number one, for the record, Raheem Kassam, I know him very, very well. He is right-wing. He's certainly not far-right. That's a nonsense. And he's not an Islamophobe, which is what they're accusing him of. He's born of immigrant stock and he was brought up as a Muslim. Evidently, Kassam's views were not debated What they mean by that was there was nobody else there to have a go at him, but there wasn't any need for anybody else. I've listened to the interview, and if you haven't, you should go to the BBC site and listen to it, or listen to it on the Twitter feed of Raheem. It was a tough interview. I thought she gave as good as she got, but there was no need to have a debate, because the woman from the BBC was the enemy. The woman from the BBC was the opposition, as always with the BBC. I've done loads of these debates where there's me as the right wing and somebody as the left wing, but basically the interviewer jumps in on the side of the lefty every time. Every time I've been on Newsnight, that's happened. Apart from when Jeremy Paxman was there. The only other person who doesn't do it is Andrew Neil. He'll give you one, he'll hammer you, he'll beat you into the floor, but then he'll do the same with the other person. But there are so many people in the BBC who don't do that. Labour MP David Lammy, is he still alive? Do we care what he says? But he says Radio 4 did not even bother to push back. Where's that phrase come from as well? Push back, I hate it. Mr. Sam's claims that Steve Bannon, the former Breitbart chairman and chief strategist to Republican President Donald Trump, was a Kennedy Democrat. I heard that bit. I don't know whether Bannon was. I know he's a war hero. I know he served in the forces. And I know he was left-wing at one point, a bit like Anne-Marie Waters. Oh, by the way, interviewed Anne-Marie today. She's on my Sputnik programme tomorrow. Oh, my God. If Raheem's upset the snowflakes, wait till you hear what she says about Islam tomorrow on my Sputnik show at 6 o'clock. Don't miss it. But, in this interview today, Raheem says, Steve Bannon, no. He was a Democrat when Kennedy was around. Now, I don't know whether it's true, but this is the worst thing that could be said because, of course, Kennedy's held up as this bastion of leftiness and soft leftiness and a lovely bloke. Tell Jackie Onassis that, shall we? But anyway, Lammy is up in arms about it. He says, and I quote, "The legitimation of white supremacists and fascists who plan to interfere in our politics is a grave threat." You what? Basically, he says that Bannon is a racist and a white supremacist, and so is Raheem Kassam. Unless the contrast has gone on your telly, I'm not being racist here, I'm making a point. There is no way that Raheem can be, in any way, shape or form, look at his skin colour, a white supremacist. And I don't think Bannon is either. What's happening here is the swamp in this country is getting as worried as the swamp in the United States of America. But instead of confronting why people are angry about Tommy Robinson's political imprisonment, or why they're angry about Brexit and why there are going to be riots on the street, the political class and their idiot mates in the MSM, particularly in the BBC and Sky News, because Sky News still haven't got over the fact that Tommy basically stuck one finger up to them and said, "I'm not talking to you yesterday. You're all liars." Well, you are all liars. He's telling the truth. There are some good people in those organisations, but they are basically, what's that word? Institutionally, right? Lefty. Institutionally against the common man, the plebs, me and you. So this idea that somehow Bannon, with this new thing he's setting up with Raheem called the movement, is going to somehow bring the far right together across the whole of Europe. No, it's not. It's going to engage with the populist movements and leaders, the people who are fed up to the back teeth with the establishment political way as it is now, the swamp, just like you and I are, but they don't want this to happen. So Lammy is now having a go at the BBC. So what happens now? It'll be a chilling effect. So the BBC won't interview anyone else from the right of politics. And they again, and Owen Jones has been tweeting about it. Somebody should just give him a slap, metaphorically, of course. I don't believe in violence, but maybe Ian Dale will do it. But anyway, Owen Jones has joined in as well. And somehow now they're trying to say that Tommy is far right, which I don't think he is. I certainly don't think Raheem is, and I don't think Steve Bannon is. They are trying to bring together all of the populist movements, whether they're in France, Germany, or Italy, and why not? Now, if we live in a big, grown-up democracy, and the lefties' view of the world is so powerful, they'll win the argument every time. Let's face it, they've got the BBC on their side, and Sky, and most of the newspapers.